Qaanaaq and north along the coast of this vast frozen land. In summer by boat, it's around 2 hours. In winter by dog sled, reckon on 6, if the ice has frozen deep enough. A generation ago, by November, that would never be in question. Today, who knows? To Siorapaluk, definitely the most northerly village in Greenland and possibly in the world. Food's up for the Greenlander sled dogs, slabs of glistening raw seal. Come autumn, they're back at work, but the sea freeze-over just keeps getting later and later in a thawing Arctic. Along the fjord, the approaching glacier wall heralded by the knock of ice on the hull. Giant boulders brought to the ocean over thousands of years. Ice caves at the point of potential and actual collapse. This carving, the terminal shattering of glaciers, is ever more intense as they retreat under the melt, like nobody can remember before. And 2 hours south by boat, there are no roads between towns in Greenland, to the airstrip at Qaanaaq. If glacial melting cuts this track to town, the only way to the outside world is by small speedboat. No chance is taken then. When you culvert a road for a glacier melting, think big. Pipes 7 feet in diameter. Because of the extremes of meltwater coming down from the glacier, they've built a new culvert under the road so big you can walk through the tunnels. And perhaps quite reasonably they thought they'd done enough. But after the summer heat wave here, they've been proved wrong. Outside, and you can see this new defence against the effect of climate change, increased glacial meltwater, is already being swept imperiously away by forces humankind has unleashed but cannot control. Well, we're standing now on these screes, the terminal moraines, ground up rocks and stones thrown down here, as they are all over Greenland, by the glaciers and by the melt. Up there behind us, what is a tongue of ice, and that is really coming down that glacier from a ice shelf which is 10 times the size of the UK. Well, to discuss what's going on here, I'm joined by Mark Wright from WWF. Mark, what are the implications of what's going on here with this increased rate of melt and, of course, even more increase right across the Arctic?
No, you're absolutely right. And across the Arctic, we're seeing rates of warming which is twice the global average, exactly as we're seeing in the South Pole. And so what that means is the ice that we're seeing here is also melting faster, and it's almost impossible to get your head around the scale of ice which is there. Like you say, 10 times the size of the UK, but several kilometres thick as well. So what happens when that melts, when that pours out into the sea? What happened in July here is indicative. So we had the heat wave in Europe, the heat wave came up here, and in that 1 month, so much meltwater poured off these glaciers into the North Atlantic that sea level rise around the world was measurable, including in London. A small amount, but measurable across the entire planet. So imagine, as that continues, and we know all the models say that it'll be less predictable, warmer, wetter in the Arctic, that will only increase going forward.
Let's just tease that out. You're saying that as people experience the unpleasantness of that late July, early August heat wave in London, it also came to Greenland, and the bounce back effect on London, and of course we're talking about London, large swathes of Europe of course, was that sea levels actually rose just off that.
Absolutely, from that one event. I know you can't imagine it, but that's that one event. But there is still so much more ice locked up here, and we know that melting will continue to rise. Melt here already is twice what it has been over the historical average.
Right, and what can we do to stop this? I know we can. It's well rehearsed that we need to cut emissions, cut greenhouse gases, eat less meat, and so forth. What are the implications of trying to put a block, or at least slow down what is now, to some degree, an inevitable process?
It is an inevitable process, but there are 3 things I think that we can absolutely do. The first is we know there is a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We have to kind of claw that back. We have to bring that level down, and we can do that through planting more forests, for example. we have to cut our emissions, and we have to cut them deeply and quickly, just through simple things that we can do, insulating our homes better, using our electricity more wisely and so on. But I think the third is how we view our energy production. If you consider across the world, globally, we still, in this day and age, subsidise the fossil fuel industry to the tune of almost $350 billion per year.
Sorry, $350
billion.
billion a year to the fossil fuel industry.
That's exactly right.
Subsidies.
That's $50 for every man, woman and child on the planet.
I thought they made money quite handsomely.
Quite right. But in the old days, you could say we need this sort of stuff because solar, wind and solar are so expensive. That is no longer true. Renewable energies are absolutely competitive and often cheaper now than the fossil fuels that we seek to replace. And so where would you rather have your money spent going forward? I personally would prefer us to see us use the money for that transition through to renewables because it is renewable. It's not damaging the atmosphere and we can have it forever.